The election season is upon us in Louisiana, and as always, there are some intriguing storylines to cover. Therefore, we wanted to check in with two of LSU's resident political experts to talk a little bit about history, trends, and some of the current colorful figures in local and national politics. So we're here with Wayne Parent, Russell B. Long Professor in the Department of Political Science, who specializes in Southern and Louisiana politics, and Bob Mann, Manship Chair and Professor/Senior Fellow at the Riley Center for Media and Public Affairs. Wayne, we'll start with you. After signing the Civil Rights Act of 1964, President Johnson reportedly told an aide, "We," meaning the Democratic Party, "have lost the South for an entire generation." Now, that kind of seems like a little bit of an underestimation in his part. How much of a lock does the GOP have on the South, and are Democrats looking like a permanent minority party in this region?
Well, the Republicans don't have a lock on the South as much as the Democrats had it before the Civil Rights Movement. Before the Civil Rights Movement, the Democrats had a really strong lock on the South. After the signing of civil rights, the sort of black-white dynamic played out, and Republicans started to do really well. And then other issues, social issues, came in. Republicans do well in the South, and it's the only place other than a few states in the Great Plains where Republicans are always favored, but Democrats have won a lot of elections. Louisiana, Bill Clinton won a couple of elections. Senator Landrieu, a Democrat, won last year. So Democrats remain competitive, but certainly now LBJ's prediction was fairly correct that Republicans are generally favored in most elections in the South.
Why do either of you think that Louisiana might have been a little late to the game, so to speak, as far as trending a little bit more conservative than other states in the South?
Well, Catholics in Louisiana had been swing voters. North Louisiana is much like Mississippi and Alabama, and started voting very conservative Republican after the Civil Rights Act and the like, with African Americans voting Democratic. Catholics in South Louisiana were swing voters, and Louisiana would go back and forth. Now Catholics are voting much more Republican, and that's only happened in the last decade, and it's due to issues like abortion and gay rights, where Catholics have become very conservative and voting on those issues. So Louisiana is voting much more in line with Mississippi and Alabama now than it did a decade ago when, for instance, Bill Clinton carried Louisiana easily, and George Bush was getting his biggest numbers in Mississippi and Alabama.
And what's been your experience, Bob, as far as this trend?
Well, I think that what Wayne has said is absolutely correct, but I also think there's some aberrations, for lack of a better word. For example, take Mary Landrieu. It would be easy and accurate to say the Democrats can still compete in Louisiana, but you also have to look at the individual races that Senator Landrieu has won. One of the reasons why she's still in the U.S. Senate is not because she's a great senator, which I think she is, not because she's a good campaigner, which I think she is, but because she has always seemed to have had the luck of getting the worst possible Republican to run against her. She's been very fortunate to have Republican candidates who weren't nearly as good at campaigning or had problems that held them back. With better opposition, she might not be there now, but she is. And I think that, so, Tip O'Neill is famous for saying all politics are local, and sometimes that's true and sometimes that's not. But in Mary Landrieu's case, for example, I think it is true in a sense. When Kathleen Blanco beat Bobby Jindal in 2003, I think it was simply because Jindal ran an awful campaign and Blanco ran a much better campaign. Having been involved in that campaign, it's maybe a bit of bragging, but I think we ran a better campaign. 4 years later, Jindal ran a very good campaign against very lackluster Democratic opposition. So sometimes it has to do with generational trends, like LBJ saying we signed away the South for a generation, but often it's just that one candidate's a lot better than the other.
But it's safe to say, go ahead.
Well, and in Louisiana, partisan politics haven't been quite as strong. I mean, and one of the reasons for that is our absence of party primaries. People don't feel quite as loyal to parties as Mississippi and Alabama. And Mississippi and Alabama should be the comparison points. I mean, they're demographically quite a bit like Louisiana. Again, Cajun, South Louisiana, New Orleans make Louisiana a little different than those states. But if you look at Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana, you see one difference where politics would be local and party politics wouldn't be quite as important, is our lack of party primaries since the 1970s. And I think that does help a Mary Landrieu and other Democrats in Republican years and Republicans in Democratic years, where Louisiana isn't quite as partisan, not quite as partisan as states that surround us.
Have you guys seen any trend of African Americans in New Orleans coming back post-Katrina these days? Is that affecting anything for this political cycle, this election cycle?
Well, I think we're not going to know for sure until we see the election returns, and more importantly, until we see the census returns from Louisiana. So we don't really know. There's the Democratic Party, particularly the Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor Fayard and Charlie Melanson, are putting a lot of time and effort into turning that African American vote in Orleans Parish, turning it out, and we'll see soon enough. But I think it is down from what it was. I think it's clearly down from what it was 5-10 years ago. It's come back some, but and maybe it's come back enough to help a Cedric Richmond get elected to Congress. It may not have come back enough to help a Charlie Melanson get elected to the Senate.